Morning. Morning, everyone. We're just going to let people in before we kick off. So people are just joining. But good morning, everyone, and welcome. I say we'll kick off in about a minute or half a minute, I should say. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Morning, Kelly. Great stuff. So it's 1 minute past the hour, so I think I will start because we've got lots to get through today. So I think we'll just let people keep joining whilst I kick off. So hi, I'm Obi Bamidele, CEO at Uptree. I'm pleased that you could all join us today for what is a highly crucial topic. And for those of you who may not know us, I'll tell you a little bit about Uptree. We are on a mission to see employers everywhere offer unique experiences of work to demystify careers and help students transition from education to employment. Uptree was founded to put an end to inequality of opportunity where no student is left behind on their journey from education to employment. And one of the privileges of chairing a panel like this is that the conversations you get to have beforehand. And over the past few weeks, I have had the good fortune to pick the brains of each of our panelists and and a lot of those conversations have shaped my own thinking as much as they've shaped the questions I'll be asking today. And so I'm really grateful to all four of our panel members and for their generosity and their time. We have lots to dig into within the hour. The format is simple. I'll pose some questions to our panel to get the discussion going, and then we'll open up for a 20-minute Q&A with you. So whilst we're talking and having the discussion, please add your questions to the Q&A section. And so I encourage you not to wait till the end, but just keep asking the questions, and we'll make every effort to answer as many questions as possible. So without any further ado, I will give a short introduction to our panel and start with Kester Bruin. Kester has spent 3 years leading the Pissarides review and one of the most rigorous pieces of research we now have into how AI is shaping the labor market, and he's done other reviews and research into this as well. He's also the author of a 500-year history of artificial intelligence. So when we need someone to tell us about this moment and in terms of whether the AI space is structural or whether we are panicking, he's the right person to bring it in on the conversation. And then our next panel member is Malcolm Horton. Malcolm Horton is Director of Talent Acquisition and Global Mobility at Linklaters, one of the world's most prestigious law firms. Malcolm has been particularly generous over the last few months, sharing his thinking on what is shifting inside professional services and what organizations like Uptree need to be paying attention to. And then I'll also move on to Oriane Whiteman. Oriane Whiteman leads emerging talent at ARM, and ARM is well known for hiring over 850 early careers professionals across 12 countries every year. Her programs are ranked among the best in the world, and she's someone who has thought very hard about what employers should be doing in this space and in terms of investments that they should be making in terms of AI. And then lastly, we've got, but not least, is Daniel Wilson. And Daniel has spent a decade at Amazon building AI products and is simultaneously, at the same time, he works with schools, charities, and young people on what this transition means for them. So he sees both sides of the wall. So that's the panel. I'll give a bit of context. So we all know that youth unemployment in the UK is at its highest in a decade. Entry-level job postings are down sharply. We do not yet know exactly how much of that is AI and how much is economic headwinds. Honestly, it's probably both, and both at the same time compounding each other. But here's what we do know, that within that picture, the young people bearing the heaviest cost are the ones who were already furthest from the opportunity. And the very capabilities that employers now prize most highly, things like judgment, critical thinking, the ability to work alongside AI intelligently, are the capabilities that require exposure to environments that most of our young people have never been in. So at Uptree, we have a reach of over 300,000 students within our network of 780 schools and 67,000 post-18 alumni. The majority are from groups already underrepresented in professional workplaces. Majority are from minoritized ethnicities, over half are first-generation university students, and over a quarter eligible for 3 school meals. So when entry-level volumes fall and the skills bar rises, it's really not an abstract concern for us. It speaks to our entire mission. For many of us involved in early careers, the question is not whether change is coming, but more about who pays the price if we do not redesign now. So with all that context in mind, I'm going to start with the first panel member, and that's Kester. So Kester, my question to you is, I mean, we all know that you've been involved in this Pissarides review amongst others, which provided a lot of sort of evidence on how AI and automation are reshaping the labor market. Could you give us some insight into what that evidence tells us about entry level and junior roles? For example, what can we expect? Are we already inside the structural shift, or are we still reading warning signs?
Thank you so much, and it's really, really great to be here. So yeah, my work at the Institute for the Future of Work, I'm an associate director there. Have been helping with some of the work on this Pissarides review, and then further work on a project funded by the EY Foundation, looking specifically at helping young people from low-income backgrounds to access better work. So those are the kind of two things that I'll be drawing on. And yeah, just for context, I mean, there is this bit of a sense of panic out there at times, and it's important to make sure that we don't sort of pass that on when actually there are other structural things going on. We know that there are lots of different headwinds. The Pissarides review, I mean, interestingly, it started a few years ago and was a 3-year project which reported in January 2025. And that seems extremely current, other than the world is changing so quickly. So I'm going to talk about what that found, but then say, well, actually, we've seen probably changes even since then. So what the review found, and called the Pissarides Review because it was led by Professor Sir Christopher Pissarides, who is a Nobel Prize-winning labour market economist, looking at system level, firm level, individual impacts, across the labour market. And what we found was that the key shift was at that point within jobs rather than kind of wholesale job destruction. So the nature of people's work, it wasn't that you were losing your job, but your job was changing in lots and lots of different ways. We hadn't seen at that point that collapse in entry level roles. It was more kind of like a deep wiring of how work was being structured and what was going on in firms at that point. There was also, I think, really importantly to say, strong evidence of the ways in which this transformation was happening in a very, very unequal ways. And one of the projects as part of that review looked, for example, at where venture capital was going. And that's very, very uneven across the UK. We're not seeing that. So one of the key things we need to work out at the system level, policy level, is making sure that there is equality of opportunity just in terms of, where money is going and, where our innovation system is happening. And we know that these technologies are highly divergent. The major risk is that they further entrench existing inequalities. In terms of one of the programs that worked within that, it looked at how skills demands were being changed, though, across millions and millions of job adverts, and looking at, what would people actually advertising for jobs actually looking for. And one of the things unsurprisingly, a massive increase in demand for technical skills within jobs, but a very, very high turnover of those skills. So it would be wrong to say, well, what we need to do is, teach more young people that they've got technical skills, because those individual technical skills may just be having such a high turnover. maybe there's no point in them learning kind of loads and loads of HTML because that's where AI might be taking over some of that coding. Instead, what we saw through that project was a very, very clear sustenance of those human-centered skills. The skills of problem solving, the skills of communication, of analyzing, of kind of judgment, those sorts of things. That's very, very important. Um, those are the things that actually become even more important in a technologizing labor market because the kind of old routine stuff, that's where we're seeing the erosion of that. You might be going in and to give a kind of, silly example, you might, kind of join a video edit company and you kind of start off by, doing the little tagging of all the tapes. And then you might say, oh, could you do a bit of work on that? And then, there's your path up to being a great editor. That entry level stuff of doing the tagging, that's gone. How do you then get that entry level thing? Well, it's about some more of the kind of the capabilities approach that we're talking about that's really important. The second piece of work I want to talk about very quickly is the work that we did in partnership with the EY Foundation, which is looking at kind of internally what can young people, young people can't change the labor market. They can't go out there and create new conditions for more jobs. What they can do, though, and there is a responsibility for schools and other organizations to help young people think about how can I make myself more receptive in terms of employability and those things. And one of the things that we found in work that we've done, talking to young people around the country, piloting work, was in looking at surfacing intrinsic and internal motivation. And this becomes even more important. What are you really passionate about? Because if you can surface what you're really passionate about, that then guides your values, it guides that growth mindset. It means that you're far more aligned in terms of what you really, really, really want to go for. And that means that piece in terms of really being able to speak authentically about what drives you, rather than, in the old days, it used to be, well, I'm really, really passionate about starting this course and whatever. And they've just kind of been told to do that. So surfacing that motivations piece is really, really important. We know that the entry level pathways are weakening, but there are lots and lots of different reasons for that. Some of it might be, kind of tariff based in terms of the stuff Trump's doing. Some of it might be, hangovers from Brexit or from COVID. We also know, perhaps more worryingly, there's some sort of preemptive adjustments that because companies are seeing this AI hype, they're saying, oh, I've got to use AI, and they're then sort of changing things without a proper evidence base. So one of the other key things from the firm level side is we need firms to take a much more reflective approach to what are you actually doing? How are you thinking long term about what these impacts are going to be? Because the danger is you throw AI systems in thinking everyone's good, got to do it, I've got to do it. And then actually you've lost your talent pipeline. So yeah, very important to focus on the human level stuff, very important to think about motivations, but there are pieces across system, firm, and individual level that are really, really important going forward.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kester. So one of the key things you've sort of said that I'm holding is, and I might come back to your points that what does that look like for a young person trying to get a first job right now? But I think key things you've mentioned are having that internal motivation, thinking about the human level aspects. So that actually ties nicely to Malcolm, to the question I have for you, because in your professional capacity, are you seeing? Can you speak to what organizations like the organizations like Linkdaters are seeing in terms of changes in sort of hiring sort of young people, junior people coming into the sector? And if so, what is actually driving that from where you sit? Is it more task for automation, or is it more uncertainty about role design, or something else?
Certainly. Thank you, Obi. And Kester, thank for laying out that preamble, because actually it aligns nicely to the point that a lot of what we're looking for in terms of young people's skills are still very much the same, right? AI is not going to make you a good lawyer. Your ability to think critically, to work logically through problems, manage clients, have a commercial mindset, That is what makes a good lawyer. AI is an enabler. And, over the last 30 years in professional services, we've seen all kinds of technology enable people to do their jobs better, not replace them, right? So AI doesn't replace the lawyer. It enables the lawyer. Now, the other part of your question is, what are companies doing with AI? And Kester, you touched on this point. I think we kind of too liberally think that AI is one thing, where every company is doing different things with it. And some are spending millions, tens of millions on systems that they're not sure what they're going to do yet. And others are doing a wait and see because they're not sure what that actually does in terms of enabling their ability to serve clients, because that is still fundamentally what a professional services company does. And one of the things that I think that young people need to be prepared to do, as well as those who are supporting them, is make sure you ask the question of the company you're applying to: what are you actually doing with technology? What is it you expect? Because don't be presumptuous that you need to actually be able to come in and code in order to get the job. That's not necessarily the case. They may still have the exact same competency framework they had before, but you will have different technology tools, sorry, to help you do the job. And one other element, which I think is probably slightly different, is that ability to experiment with that technology. Because the technology is far from perfect, one of the things we are testing probably more is, are you willing to accept that you're not going to get things right the first time? Technology will help you, but you're going to have to keep doing it over and over again and use your judgment. Engage other people to evaluate what you're doing, to figure out how do you triangulate to a right answer using technology, but also still using your brain. And people's willingness to actually do that and articulate that they can do that, and that is still part of their fundamental skill set, actually will matter more.
So I wanted, because I've heard a lot about, again, that flexibility, open-mindedness, asking questions. So the question there's something that's on my mind is the fact that a lot of young people, particularly young people that we serve, one are, when we talk about the exposure gaps or within sort of their own learning, how are we, I guess the question is, how do we ensure that whatever it is they've learned in schools, or we talk often a lot about how young, sometimes within school settings, you can be a bit institutionalized and have a certain way of doing things. What role does the employers play in ensuring that those who have the least sort of exposure, who may not feel so able to ask questions, or have the very capabilities that we're kind of shifting towards, what role do employers play? And maybe I could come to Oriana on that, in thinking about how we are making sure that the access gap is not even further widened.
Yeah, it's a hard question, and I think it's important to remember that we as employers, we don't just consume the talent, we create it. And so if we stop providing those opportunities for young people to start their career, what talent is going to exist 5, 10, 15 years from now? And I liked what you touched upon, Malcolm, where AI has value in society, and I liken it to the days of, you remember from dial-up to broadband. It was a big shift for those that do remember. For those that don't, apologies. But there was a time, pre-internet and then post-internet, when it was still very slow and janky. Now it's obviously much smoother, but that evolution accelerated people's ability and the tools that they use. AI is just another step on that journey. So it's just going to change how we work, but it shouldn't change fundamentally the basics. And I want to come back to what you said, Malcolm, that using AI in any role is great. My worry, and I say worry because this is a safe space for us all to be honest with each other, when you start your job, most people are pretty poor at it. I mean, think on this panel, your first ever job, you were not the skilled expert, you were not delivering business impact and shareholder value immediately. It's just not the reality. People need space to experiment and learn and get things wrong. And when we think about shaping those roles and the opportunities, we have to make sure that we protect roles that give people space to grow those skills that are needed, particularly if we're serious about equity. We have to design for it. We have to create the space that people can learn from the ground up, can experiment, fail, get it wrong, and be pretty bad at their job to start off with, but know that in the future it's going to benefit society. And that's not just the company, that is the greater good of the entire sector that we're in. And I just hope that everyone on this call who probably works in this field or supports it in some way or fashion realizes that we're the ones that make that change and we're accountable. So it's on us to protect that space for young people.
So, and this might be to you before I go to Daniel, to you, Orion and Malcolm. So within the context of work experience, I mean, obviously we're talking about entry levels as well, but also in terms of how, what does that look like for work experience opportunities, in your opinions?
The work experience opportunities are there, but I think to the question you asked around what employers do, we are terrible at helping them, honestly speaking, terrible at helping them kind of overcome that shyness of asking questions where they're just terrified of the hierarchy. You've only got a couple of weeks to make an impact in work experience. You need to show what you're capable of. And people feel insecure sometimes asking too many questions. It feels like you know too little, as opposed to creating that safe space where, to Orian's point, they don't know what they don't know. And they certainly don't know what we do with technology. And so they're never going to ask the right questions because they have no idea what we're doing. And so we've got to prompt and challenge them to ask questions and feel comfortable doing that. That becomes an employer's responsibility. That becomes the development team's responsibility. And most firms are still struggling with that, to be honest.
Orion, do you have any thoughts?
I'm just loving Malcolm's honesty because there is no perfect model. And I think we have a slightly different vantage point that, for those that don't know, Arm sits in the semiconductor industry. So we're not experiencing the shift of AI. We're quite literally operating inside it. You know, AI is built on compute, which is driven by the semiconductor industry. And so we have a really interesting challenge that we really want to nurture the next generation of talent. And call out, maybe we do obviously work with Uptree and provide work experience opportunities. And we're very intentional about giving physical opportunities where people code and design with a little microbit. So it's like a programmable board, and they're basically learning how code connects to hardware. So the designing could be a fitness tracker, I don't know, a notification alert, something. They're playing around. We love doing that, but the scale is so hard for us, and particularly because the people that would run those work experience opportunities for us are our engineers. And those engineers are so time poor with the acceleration of AI in this digital landscape that, to Malcolm's point, we offer something and we're very proud of that, but it's nowhere near where it should be. And we haven't solved for it yet. And we're doing the best we can. But I think even that deserves commending to anyone on this call that, again, trying to make an effort and doing your best still in itself holds value, even if it's only a couple of people, 5, 10, 15, 20, might not be thousands, but it's something. And that's where we are at the minute.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So I think what I'm sort of hearing from your 2 points is, yeah, it's not perfect, but I think where there's real value is as we start to see shifts within how we deliver work experience. where there's real opportunity for immersion, where young people can really get to experience scenarios, rather than just kind of observation or just theory. That helps even more so with you. I think that's kind of really what I'm hearing. But it's now time for me to go to Daniel, because Daniel, you've got quite a I'd say an unusual you see both sides, because you're building AI products, but at the same time you also lead a sort of apprentices as well. So my question to you is, I mean, it's taking on board everything that you've heard. What are you seeing within the space, particularly in terms of how you building sort of AI products? What from your vantage point, what are the sort of the key things that you are seeing, particularly within AI?
Sure. So yeah, for context, I manage apprentices and interns and work experience students directly. I'm a school governor. I talk to schools and colleges and teachers and pupils regularly about AI and early careers. But I also work in a company that has millions of AI apps and agents working every day with people across the business. And in my role, I manage an AI upskilling community for 2,500 apprentices. And many of these people are straight out of school and needing to adapt to work for the first time, but also into using AI in their jobs. So the kind of things that I'm seeing, if I use this as a bit of a bellwether for other companies in a little bit later down the line, is that in AI shaped roles, what they're kind of shaping up to be now is that you have to have the ability to be able to experiment and do many things at once. So the ability to generate ideas, but then go and try and build them yourself. Role playing different functions, almost like speed running different careers, if you will, but using that AI as a communication tool. So, you still will go to experts to get the things built properly, but you use the AI to kind of prototype. And fascinatingly, you can go down many interesting rabbit holes and get exposure to many new things really quickly. But fundamentally, it's a human AI partnership where you have to play to each of your strengths to get the best from it. So the kind of things that I push is the need to treat AI differently at different times. So sometimes you'll need to treat it like a teacher, where you need to learn new things from AI. Other times you'll treat it like a colleague that is going to challenge your thinking. And then other times, and most people go directly to this, but other times you'll treat it like your own employee or a subordinate. But in reality, you only want to be doing this when the task is super explainable, you can check the output really quickly, and it's low risk. So all of that together it's essentially management skills. We're seeing management skills, but managing of AI tools and agents are becoming increasingly important. But in early careers especially, it's essential that your AI use leaves you more skilled and capable than if you not have used it. And like a little bit contrarian here, but I think we shouldn't just focus on productivity. Productivity is great, but we need to make effort and quality really cool. We need to make learning new things as part of the process really cool, even if it takes just as much time as the task took beforehand, before using AI, because that's still a benefit. And in terms of the skills, then the skills that I'm seeing that are helping people thrive in roles that use AI. Well, surprisingly, they're not really technical skills. These things really help you get maybe to the next level, but you can introduce those more technical skills later. The real human skills, and they've already been mentioned so far, but just to add to them, things like confidence, curiosity, the clarity to be able to see and explain a problem clearly, critical thinking, obviously, but then creativity as well, to partner with AI in unusual and interesting ways to create things that are previously out of reach. Really important is community and collaboration. It's too big for any of us to stay on top of and learn on our own. So we have to kind of work together, learn in public and share ideas. And then a really important one is around conscious use. Make sure that, AI is the right tool in the first place, and that your use of it isn't causing harm to you and your own skills. By the way, these kind of human skills are great for any changing and dynamic work, not just AI stuff. What I'm also seeing though is this kind of gap, this gap between kind of school and work.
Yeah.
Both of them, I don't think, are doing great at kind of seeding these skills in people, especially if you look at like the curriculum or exams, or if you look at hiring assessments and job descriptions. Are we actually set up? Do we have the processes and systems set up to look for these things? And I don't think we have. I think in my experience, teachers are, and schools and trusts are coming to me, and charities, asking for help, asking for, that exposure. What's out there? What do jobs look like? What are the skills of tomorrow going to look like? And this is really hard. I've formerly done roles where I've looked at the future of work. It's really hard to know what's coming. If we were to roll the clock back to the 90s and look at how the internet was launching, we knew disruption was coming, but would we have guessed that things like taxi drivers were disrupted by it? It's those second and third order things that we have no idea about just yet. And if you think about kind of the preparation for young people, what I see in apprentices is they're often coming out of school and into work surprised by the level of autonomy, surprised by the amount of ambiguity at work, and the number of tools that they have available to them, and the fact that there's not necessarily a set way to solve any problems. So I think everything's moving so fast, but we do have this finite window to get things right, especially between education and work. The one thing that's worse than kind of no AI skills are kind of bad AI habits. People just going directly to AI, that can cause skill atrophy, and not good. I think we all need to kind of take a bit of agency in this, no pun intended, but we all need to kind of shift from this is happening to me to even though I'm not the greatest at AI, I can still get involved and explore, because it's for the first time that we've ever had this kind of technology that is available to all of us, and also is the threat of it replacing us as well. So that's fairly unprecedented.
Brilliant. Thanks, Daniel. So I think what I'm taking from what you said, and it's interesting how it really aligns with what the rest of the panel have been saying. So we're talking about the importance of curiosity, resilience, supporting. So in a sense, it feels it's not just about the skills gap, but more of it ensuring that you're providing a good a culture of learning where young people are sort of really supported and allowed to learn in a different way and ask questions, not to be afraid to make mistakes, take risks. So, but one of the things I wanted to come back to was the point you made about with schools and employers, that it seems there's a connection between education and employment, and it's still there's a gap there that's not clicking. What thoughts do you have in terms of how we kind of manage that gap between what young people are learning at schools and how they're coming into the workplace? Is there anything that you think that we could be doing to better to improve?
Sure. I think it comes down to individual level as well as company level. Look, in my exposure to schools, they're always asking for more. Can you introduce us to different people in the company that do different jobs, etc. So just corralling the types of people that want to help, and a lot of people do want to help. They are acutely aware of all the disruption that's going on and want to give something back. So if you are a school or charity, don't be shy about asking for help. And if you are an individual or working in a larger kind of social value team, kind of try and find those people in your company that can kind of reach out to schools as well. And I will say, if you are a school, don't put stuff off. Just ask. People want to help, and they're often moving much quicker than the kind of they're used to fast-paced stuff. So if they offer the help, take it up. I think to come back to Ariane's point, look, this is a really big issue, and it shouldn't just be on schools or employees. It's on everyone. If we think about the shape of things to come, okay, so fewer people are being born. We then need young people, to be able to do more in a job market. We need them to be more skilled and more prepared, and selfishly, they need to be paying in to social security, so the whole system doesn't collapse. And if people are out of work in their 20s, that has a really long-term effect. That wage scarring lives on for decades more. It impacts people's ability to become managers. That skills gap compounds if you're expecting a certain level of skill from someone in their, say, 30s, and they just haven't had jobs or the opportunities. So we have to do everything we can, whether that's the light touch stuff from exposure, just having a Teams call and talking to a classroom about your job and your interesting career path that maybe didn't go to plan. The more voices that people hear, the better that young people can see that there are lots of different opportunities. And I've found that relationships with schools and charities are really sticky. If you find one or two people, they'll keep coming back, and then that kind of you can get that message across to many people. I think also just to add this as well, I think again coming back to the systems that we have in business, we really need to rethink the way that we've set things up, from job descriptions. Are we really thinking clearly about what good looks like in this job, or are we hiring for the job as it looked a few years ago? If your job descriptions haven't changed in the last 5 years, then I would really say look at them again. Even if they haven't changed in the last year, the pace of change and the half-life of skills, especially in the technical space, is rapid. And it's super frustrating for people out there right now, young people especially, that are coming to me with their CVs that look great for their age, and they're just not getting anything. And then more senior people aren't getting anything either. They're not getting any breaks. So we really need to look about the technology and the human touch points that we have in hiring to make sure that we're able to spot adjacent skills. We're able to, like Ariane said, hire people with a career path and a development and an understanding that they're not going to be the finished product early on.
Fantastic, thank you. Kes, I have one more question before we sort of open the sort of Q&A section. I think to Daniel's point about schools play a part, employers also, there's an element of sort of investment as well, because to ensure that we're working together. From your research and a lot of the work you're doing, is there anything within sort of the policy space that you think should be looked at to be able to, because I think the key point I'm trying to get to is in all of this, it's still the fact that the people who are most disadvantaged that are the very people we support here, who don't have access, who don't have a good exposure to or have less sense of self-agency, less familiarity within kind of the settings that we're describing. Is there anything that you're sort of seeing in terms of evidence within policy that perhaps could support and
thank you to everyone. It's been really fascinating hearing these inputs. Just to pick up on that and something that Ariane said in terms of being able to fail. And I think, I was a secondary school teacher for 20 years. One of the big problems is that schools are systems under such pressure that people are not allowed to fail in the right ways. And particularly for young people, from low income backgrounds who are not facing great opportunity, they are told they have failed, but they are not given opportunities to fail and learn in a safe environment. And that is partly a policy shift that needs to happen. That's partly an investment shift where schools need supporting to be able to open up more resource shifts. And I've in some of the work I've done, for example, we spent a lot of time talking to career support advisors in schools, and absolutely incredible work that some of them are doing. Some of them just not able to deliver in the same way because they don't have the resources to be able to do that. So we've been calling for some further, this is policy, isn't it? But it's also about investment and impact to build the kind of social capital of those who are working in employment support in schools to really be able to help young people with that. So there are kind of policy things like that. There's also kind of huge scale things. For example, a lot of work we were doing in Cornwall, fantastic part of the world, but struggles in so many ways, partly because the distance to opportunity might be really difficult. It's like there's a job here, and I think Malcolm was talking about frictions. There's a job here, but it's 3 bus rides away. Now that's complicated in terms of that. That has a narrative impact on young people, where one young person was saying they're on a fantastic course, by the way. They were on this fantastic digital animation course, And they said, I'm on this course even though I am from Cornwall. Now that's a narrative piece, like, well, in terms of opportunity, in terms of being able to reduce some of those geographic frictions because of some of the technological stuff is fantastic. There are also policy things around, frictions of matching people to opportunity, whereby we see a lot of small businesses or SMEs, micro businesses who would like to be able to do more, as others on the panel have said, but the frictions are too high in terms of that's form filling. It's like, being able to do this, being able to do that. Now, again, there are some technological solutions to be able to help with that. Like, you want to do it, we got young people who want to do it. Let's try and make this happen. So yeah, there are lots of things that can happen. Some of those need to happen at the policy space. Some of those need to happen just in terms of, culture within firms and thinking about, as Daniel said, look, it's really important that firms understand what actually we want to do. It's not just about productivity. It's about, as Oriane says, the kind of society that we want. Yeah. Those are real culture and management decisions that means that all of us, whether that's in positions of leadership or in governance or, working in schools or as individuals, we've got to be more reflective about our own tech use, which is, one of the fantastic things I thought that, Daniel was saying is, like, you've got to be thoughtful actually about that. And that critical thinking about what are the narratives about what this tech is going to do, which, may be kind of ultra positive from a particular tech provider. Well, hold on a sec. Let me just be reflective about what's going to work with that. And what schools can really do, and this is about, again, strategy and practice and in the classroom, is helping to engender environments where young people are really taught about that process of reflection. Now, I was a math teacher, I came through the period where, like, even calculators, you know what I mean? Like, and when is it the right to use a calculator? But at the end of my time, like, when is it right to be able to use the appropriate tool for this? That reflective piece is really about culture, not about tech at all, because we've been doing this for hundreds, thousands of years. It's about culture. So lots of things at different elements. There's policy which can help shape that and nudge towards that. There's fiscal incentives around that. And you know what, maybe if you get a national insurance break, if you are a company who is dealing more with young people and giving young people opportunities, these sorts of things are high level. There's firm level stuff on culture, school level stuff on culture, and then stuff that young people can do. And I thought, all of those different C's, Daniel, were fantastic. Creativity, confidence, communication, thinking about habits and skills. So this is a system-wide, wide and deep problem for us all to think about.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kester, for that. I think you've rounded that up really nicely for us to go into sort of questions and answers. We got Kirsty, have you got questions for us to pose?
Yes. So the first question came from Kelly, and she asked, Daniel made a very interesting point about whether companies are hiring for what is good in the role as it will develop in the future, or for what was good in the past or present. Can you please give us some examples as what would be very helpful and some tips on what managers can think about what a role might need in the future? It's hard to know what you don't know. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Kelly. I would say, if you do have a job opening, what's the first thing that you do? Do you reach for a previous job description, or do you sit and think about what is needed to thrive and succeed in this role? Do you start to list all of the skills that you think are necessary and needed? And by the way, having worked in the tech space, there is always a million ways to do things, and there's always a far more advanced way that is just out of reach. So by putting any technical things in, or even just putting a certain way of doing things in, you might be limiting your exposure to some amazing candidates out there. So if I was starting my own company tomorrow, my job descriptions would list a set of problems rather than requirements. And these, I would encourage people from all backgrounds to then see how they could solve these problems with their skills. In terms of, like, deeply thinking as well about the role, how do you see it going and developing in the future? What would you like that person to be doing in, like, 1 year, 2 years? I know it's hard to see, but let's think, and what would be your best case scenario? Because if you have this thought in mind, you can start working towards it. And by the way, I've had many job titles in my time in Amazon, but I've also had my job title changed within a week or two of joining the team. And I've also hired people and then moved them into different roles very quickly as well myself. So it's, you don't have to tie people to a specific job title. My kind of prediction for one of the biggest job trends in the future is the word and in job titles. I've got an and or two in my job title as well. So we're expecting people to do multiple things, but we shouldn't see it as a fixed thing necessarily. If your role in your company is okay, I know a lot of companies have a lot of things tied into job titles, but it should be a breathable, adaptable thing. Hopefully that helped.
If I could add something there, one of the things that I think Daniel kind of has highlighted is how do you test for adaptability, right? We don't know what the job, even here, we don't know what the job's going to look like 2 years from now. We can assume certain things, but given the way technology works, the technology itself will change, the governance of that will change, the commerciality of that will change. We need people who can adapt to change. And to Daniel's point, having the ability to take on multiple roles and do different things that become more relevant as time goes on is the type of profile that becomes more and more important. And you need to then also figure out as an employer, how do you assess for that? How do you create an environment where you're not just looking at a CV, you get them in a room, you give them a problem, say, show me 5 ways to solve this problem, right? Show me how you can think laterally about different things, how creative you can be, and how if I switch a variable, how do you adapt to that, right? And that takes time and requires a much more open mind when you're looking at a candidate.
Yeah, just very, very quickly, that totally agree with that, which is why in the work that we've been doing at the Institute, we've tried to get away from skills to think about capabilities and understanding. Actually, I was just scribbling down there, Daniel, someone who is capable is shapeable. And again, understanding for young people, look, it's not just about the list of skills you've got, it's about how actually you are adaptable and shapeable, and being able to show that is really, really important. I just threw something in the chat there on resources towards good quality work, because as Oriana's saying, we need to be having that high bar of sensing, good work will lead to a flourishing society. And that sense of what does a really, really good job look like, dignity, autonomy, flexibility, all those kind of things. That's where we need to be aiming for.
Brilliant, thanks. Kirsten, have you got any other questions?
Yeah, my next question came from Jenny, who's asked, how can schools best engage employers to support the delivery of AI awareness and conscious use, not rely on it completely, but to leverage it for future career success? Who wants to jump in on that one first?
I can jump in there. Yeah, so there is a lot of content out there. Okay, so it can be bewildering about where to go and where to get started with AI. One thing I have found in many teams inside and outside of Amazon, including schools and classrooms and colleges as well, the experts are often in amongst us, okay, and we don't realize this. I've not really known a technology where people can leapfrog each other, like far more technical people so quickly. I delivered a talk at like a data infrastructure conference, very techie people, and the best AI questions I got was from the AV guy that worked setting up the room as part of the conference space, who was building his own kind of models and doing all these crazy things way above my level of expertise. So I would first do a little audit and check around you. Are there any teachers? Are there any governors in this space? I'm a school governor. I try and offer support in that way as well as an individual. So there might be some people straight away in your orbit. And then, selfless plug here, but Amazon has some content as well as I know Deloitte have stuff as well. There is content out there to kind of help and support schools as well. But it's about finding those kind of trendsetters within that space. In the teaching space as well, I don't know, maybe I could follow up with a few kind of really good AI educators that I learn a lot from every single day. But yeah, there are experts everywhere, I would say.
Yes, I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of the last teachers to join teaching when it was chalk and blackboard, genuinely. And when I left, it was multi-touch, kind of interactive smartboards. And most teachers were just using it like a blackboard. There is a problem of tech adoption and how to get that right, which is in schools, but in other organizations as well. And schools really, really do need help to be able to do that. We know there's cupboards full of like old tech that's just never got inhabited properly. But there are reflective practices and toolkits to help schools and other organizations do that. In fact, that's exactly the work that I've been doing a lot, and I'm working with a large network of schools at the moment at the kind of strategy level with the school board, but also kind of more quotidian, like what would that look like in the classroom to go through some of this. I'll put a resource in the chat, which is something that we developed in collaboration with the CIPD, which is more kind of general firm-based stuff around how do you get tech adoption right that's innovation positive, but is also thinking about generating social and capacity as well. But part of it is about, again, that thing of reflecting together. And it's the together that's extremely important. It's not called big tech for nothing, because we need to understand together in our communities how to best use these things. So schools, I think there's some great stuff out there, and some of the work that I've been doing speaks to that. But it's really about getting that good reflective practice about how do you use the most appropriate tool across these different stakeholder groups.
Cassie, have you got another question for us?
Yes, next question came from Jessica, who asked, for employers here actively redesigning, what is the biggest internal barrier? Is it process, leadership, governance, or something else? I know that you've commented on this, Oriane, so I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsty, and a great question, Jessica. And actually, I think the biggest barrier is companies knowing what they want, or worse, what they need, because the world is changing so quickly. A lot of things can feel very reactive, very quick change. Oh, we thought we needed this skill set, we now need this. So there's a level of agility that you, assuming from an employer side, if you sit within talent acquisition or an enabling function that supports it, I think there's a level of agility you need to hold. But the real question is going to your leaders in the business, depends how your company's structured, but going to those people at the top to say, what is our talent model? And it's really simple. You can either buy talent, build talent, you can borrow it through contractors, or you can bot, which is automation. And actually asking that question will give you a better understanding of, are we going to buy ready-made talent that's experienced, or are we going to build but know there's a slower ramp up? What can we afford to do in this environment? And every company is different. So my advice would be, go get your nose in everyone's face and ask the questions. What's going on? What talent do we need? Why? Be prepared to shift and change. And actually, that's our role in industry, to stay as agile as we can to support the business. And then from that, you should get better clarity to help you figure out, what do we now do around processes, hiring, what talent we're looking for. But it's hard. So I don't have a perfect methodology, Jessica, but yeah, you buy, build, borrow, bot is the best foundation I could pass on. So I hope that helps.
I think one thing I would add there, and that was very, very useful. I think the most resistance I see is from successful kind of senior leaders, not at the top, but kind of heading up different practices, different regions, who are just not seeing the value of change, right? They have done very well doing things the same way for the last 30 years. They are not motivated to change. And just saying with either, and it's usually a stick, which says you're going to have to change, does not necessarily create the healthiest environment for people coming in to actually take advantage of that and become part of that change. Um, you really need a lot of specialists in change throughout the organization to bring everyone on this journey together. And the larger the organization gets, we're in 30 countries. It is hard to get people on the same journey when they see the world so differently and they see themselves as experts in what they do. And they also have a view of young people and they have a view of technology. And you have to sell, organizations have to sell this internally to make sure they're on the same page, or else it will not land effectively when we bring young people into the organization. Everyone will end up having a very different experience depending on which team they sit in, and that's not healthy.
Brilliant. Thanks, Malcolm. Spot on. Kirsty, we got time for one more. Just mindful we've got 4 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So next question, and the final one was, Malcolm described a shift from shadowing to immersive scenario-based work experience. For those running work experience programs, is that realistic right now? What would you need to make it happen?
I think you need more people on the ground doing it. Unfortunately, we tend to say, okay, well, we're going to try and make the team as lean as possible, and people hopefully will just be able to prove themselves. The reality is you need more people in the room to actually explain to these young people what is actually going on rather than less, rather than just giving them a tasks to do and putting them into a room quietly typing away. That doesn't work. Now, a lot of these work experiences are not very long. So, if you can convince a team of committed individuals in the organization to put that time aside for what is effectively an investment in someone who could be with you for the next 10 to 15 years, it's worth it.
Definitely.
But it comes back to selling within the organization, the importance of an investment in culture and engaging young people in the right way from the very beginning.
Fantastic. Thanks, Malcolm. Yeah, definitely. That's something we're certainly thinking a lot more, even at Uptree, in terms of how, to Oriane's point, taking small steps. Because I think sometimes, obviously, with large corporations, it's can make the investment, but sometimes for smaller organizations is just having the people and the willingness to be able to just bring a couple of people into your organization and then to kind of take them on that journey of work experience. So I mean, for us, our mission is to see employers everywhere, because we don't believe the work experience should be something only afforded by large corporations. I really want to thank you all for your time. We're coming to the end. I think just in terms of in closing, I'll leave you something we believe at Uptree. I mean, we've spent 10 years at Uptree working with young people who are extraordinary. They are a lot of the things we've touched on. They're curious, they're resilient, they're full of potential. What they have lacked is not ability. It's more access to environments where they can see professional life from the inside and start to shape their own place within it. And this is what we're here to build at Uptree. And we cannot do it with employers who we can only do it with employers who are willing to step up. And we're grateful to organizations like Linklaters and ARM who we sort of partner with to give work experience opportunities to young people, particularly young people who come from sort of lower socioeconomic backgrounds, who don't have opportunities. If you want to play a part in bridging that gap with us, we'd love to hear more from you. I don't know if our details, we can share our details are on the screen. Reach out to us. But yeah, I just want to say thank you, Kester, Malcolm, Oriane, and Daniel, for your time. We really appreciate it. And thank you to our audience for today. Yeah, thank you so much. We're really grateful. And hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.